So friends, you would have often heard the concepts or terms like support, resistance, uptrend, downtrend whenever you have heard people talking about the stock markets or stock price movements. In this video, we'll be talking about what do we mean by support, resistance and trends. So folks, let's start off with support. Support is that level at which we have a demand that overpowers the supply. Now, when we talk about stock price movement, let's say a stock price is going down because the suppliers are overpowering the buyers. That means at every price point, I have a supplier ready to sell, but I don't have a buyer to buy. And if the supplier wants to still continue selling, he has to lower his price and then he will be able to exit his position. So as the price is going down, we have more and more suppliers that are coming in and there is a huge supply in the stock as compared to the demand. And the prices are going down. Now let's say the price has gone down to a certain level and below that level, the price is unable to sustain. That level is known as my support zone, which means there are a few buyers who have now kicked in and who are now trying to overpower the sellers and not letting the price go down any further. So this level is known as your support level. And whenever these support levels are breached with huge volumes, that means that the stock is in a definitive bear grip and you should be careful if you have a long position. Conversely, if we want to talk about resistance, it is that level beyond which the stock price is unable to go and sustain higher. For example, a stock has started going up and at each level I have new buyers coming in and the sellers are willing to sell only at a higher price, which means that your buyers are able to overpower the sellers and the prices are going higher. At certain level, if the price is unable to go further up, which means the price is taking a resistance at that level and the buyers are unable to overpower the sellers and the price is kind of consolidating at that level, that is known as your resistance level. And as we have covered in our previous videos, the trend is the overall direction in which the price is moving. So if a price is going up, forming a higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom pattern, that means that the stock is in an uptrend. And conversely, if the stock is going down, the price is going down, forming a lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom pattern, then that is a downtrend. So now we'll talk about these concepts, support, resistance, and trend lines by looking at a few examples, and we'll try to build up on these concepts further. So as you can see on my screen, whenever the price of a stock moves, it's a function of the demand and supply that is visible on that given stock. And the price always moves in trends. It will always follow a zigzag pattern as we have covered earlier. And in your charting platform, you have an indicator known as zig lines, which will help you identify these support and resistance levels, which we'll be seeing in the form of some examples. So if you see in this particular example that I have on my screen, the stock is trying to go up, but at this level it is stagnating and it is not able to sustain beyond this level. It again corrects and goes down, but it is not able to go below this support level that I have marked here. So the level beyond which the stock price is unable to go higher, that is my resistance level, which means the suppliers are overpowering the buyers. And at the support level, my buyers are overpowering the suppliers or the sellers. Now let's assume that at this particular move, the resistance is cleared and the stock has been able to sustain above the resistance level. Then it will go up and create another resistance and it will create a new support. So this is how we need to identify the support and resistance levels, because whenever we want to take an entry in a given stock, we need to always take the entry when the resistances are breached with good volumes, and we need to always try to exit our positions when it is creating a new resistance and it is trying to go into a corrective or a consolidative phase. So building upon these concepts further, in case of a support, your buyers come in and they try to overpower the sellers and the prices are unable to sustain below that level. And in case the supports are breached with good volumes, that means that the bears have taken control over the bulls and it is time to be cautious if you are having a long position. Conversely, in case of resistances, your suppliers are trying to overpower the buyers and they are not able to let the price sustain higher. And in case your resistances are breached with good volumes, then it indicates a definitive bull grip and the buyers are able to take control back from the sellers. So always bear these concepts in mind that when you are looking at the price movement and the support and resistance zones, you also have to be mindful of the volume. And if there is a significant volume which is above average, then that candle or that movement has more significance in either of these two scenarios. Now coming to the concept of trend. In case of an uptrend, you would see that the stock price is continuously going up. There would be small phases of corrections, but eventually the overall trend is showing that the stock price is going up. It means that you will have a higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom kind of a formation. Whereas in case of a downtrend, you would see that the stock price is overall going down, but it is going in the defined fashion or a smooth fashion. A fashion where you are forming a lower top, a lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom, lower top and lower bottom. So if you can see this example on my screen, we have the chart of Siemens India on a weekly time frame, and if you notice, the stock is in a visible uptrend starting May 2020. So you are seeing that there is a higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom formation. Now it is very difficult to visualize this just by looking at the chart. That is why for beginners, we can use indicators named zig lines which will help you identify this pattern. Taking the example of a downtrend, I have the chart of BSE Limited on my screen on a daily time frame, and if you notice here, there is a lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom formation, which is a clear indication that the stock is in a visible downtrend. And again, we can make use of indicators like zig lines, which will help us visualize this better. Now, before we take some examples on live charts, let's talk about one more interesting concept, which is known as your polarity of support and resistance. Polarity in simple terms means switching. For example, a negative thing becomes a positive thing or switches to a positive thing. So in the context of stocks and support and resistance, if your stock is breaking a resistance zone, which means let's say this was your defined resistance zone and the stock was not able to cross that, but now the stock has broken the resistance zone, it is expected that the stock price will retrace and take support in the previous resistance zone. That is known as polarity, which means your previous resistance has now started acting as a support. Similarly, if your stock has broken down a support level and it has gone down below the support, it will retrace and try to come up and try to take a resistance at the previous support zone, which means your previous support zone has now started acting as a new resistance zone. So this is what we mean by the polarity of support and resistance, where in case of an uptrend, your resistance becomes your next support, and in case of a downtrend, your support becomes the next resistance. And this is what we call as polarity of the resistance and support. So whenever you visualize the polarity of your support and resistance, you have to be mindful of two things. Number one, the length or the body of the candle, which is breaching your support or your resistance zone. If it is a real body candle, it has more significance as compared to a small body candle. And second, the volume that is accompanied with the price movement. If that particular breach of the resistance zone is accompanied by big volumes, that holds more significance as compared to the breach of the resistance with a smaller volume. And this is what we had precisely covered in the price volume analysis also, that along with price, volume provides a very good indication or an additional view of the strength or the momentum of the move. So let's take a small visual example to visualize the polarity of support and resistance. If you are able to see my screen, we have these points 1, 2, 3 and 4 marked here. The stock is trying to go up, unable to clear this dotted line, comes down. Again tries to go up, unable to clear the dotted line and comes down. And then again the stock tries to go up, breaching your resistance zone. Now when the resistance zone is breached, The stock again tries to retrace back and tries to take support at the same level where the previous resistance existed. This is what we refer to as polarity of the resistance now acting as a support. And conversely, when the price is going down, it is unable to go below these levels marked by the dotted line, and when the price actually goes down below that level, it would typically come up and retrace to take a resistance at the same level where the previous support existed. Always remember, you need to be mindful of the volumes that accompany that particular price move and the candlestick, that is the body of the candle and the length of the body of the candle. So to summarize, in case of an uptrend, the price is going up in a smooth fashion and it is creating a pattern of higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom, higher top, higher bottom. And in case of an uptrend, your stock price will try to breach the previous resistance and try to create a new support, which would typically be around the previous resistance. Similarly, in case of a downtrend, your stock price is coming down, forming a lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom, lower top, lower bottom pattern, which means the previously defined support zone is being breached and new resistances are being created, which will typically be around the same level where the previous support existed, which indicates the polarity of the support and resistance. Now folks, let's try to use a charting platform to help understand how to plot these trend lines and how to plot the supports and resistances. Now let's log into the Dhan platform and try to use the indicators to plot the support, resistance and trend lines. So I'll open tv.dhan.co and log in with my login credentials which I have on my Dhan account. So once you log in, you are directly taken to the charting platform where you can search for your stock and start applying the indicators. So let's use the Reliance chart which has opened up by default and let's keep it as a raw chart. I will remove every other indicator that I have applied here. Alright, so here you can search for your stock. If I want some other stock, let's say Nifty, I can search for Nifty here. I can select my time frame from here. If I want to see the data on a weekly time frame, hourly time frame, daily time frame, I can choose whatever I want. So for the sake of simplicity, let me keep it a daily time frame. And if you see the small magnet button here, this magnet will essentially help you draw the lines from the precise points. For example, if I am drawing a trend line, if I want to draw a trend line from this point to this point, if I keep the magnet symbol on, by default it will touch the high points or the low points as I want it. But if I do not keep the magnet point on and if I want to draw a trend line, it may not touch the exact point. So for example, I have to be very precise with my cursor movement if I do not want to use my magnet. So it's always advisable that we want to use the magnet so that the drawings are better and precise. Second, if I select a particular indicator or tool and if I draw a line from, let's say, this point to this point, then after I finish the first instance of the drawing, I will again have to go and click on that indicator if I want to draw another trend line. So to avoid that duplication of effort, I can stay in the drawing mode. That is the symbol just below the magnet symbol, which means once I have selected one particular indicator or tool, I can use it n number of times till I unselect it and select something else. For example, this, it is still in the same mode. I am able to draw more lines without having the need to go and select that again. So number one, magnet mode, and number two, drawing mode. These are the basic things. Now, if I want to draw my support or resistance, I can go to this line, I can select the horizontal line or horizontal ray, and if I notice, my Nifty has not been able to sustain below this particular level, that is 15,200 to 15,700 on a daily time frame. So this kind of indicates my support zone. And if I want to plot in my resistance, I can say that this was a defined resistance zone, that is 15,886, because when the stock went to this level, it corrected and came down. Again, it went to this level, it corrected and came down. So, and if you see, this may be my level for my resistance, because when the stock went up to 15,800 levels, 800, 900 levels, it was not able to sustain beyond that level. It came down, again tried to go up, and again faced a resistance at the same level and again came down. So this is how you can identify a support and resistance levels. Let's take a few more examples. Let's take the example of Shobha Developers, which is a real estate stock. If you see this particular zone here, which I am showing on my screen, and if I want to draw in my support and resistances, I can say that my stock is facing a stiff resistance at 560, 570 levels. It is unable to cross that level and again coming down, unable to cross that level, again coming down. And on the support side, I can say that the stock is taking a support at 480, 490 levels, because below that the stock is not able to sustain. So this is what my support and resistance levels look like. And if you see and notice this particular candle, which is where the stock gave a breakout and cleared the resistance, it was a long body candle, which means that this particular breach of resistance has some significance because of the length of the body of the breakout candle. And if you see here, the stock went up and gave a phenomenal return. From 570 levels, it is now at around 700 plus levels. Now on the same chart, if you want to plot in some trend lines, I can go and select this particular indicator, which is a trend line indicator, and I can try to join all the top levels to arrive at a trend line. So if you notice here, if I draw this particular line, it is showing that the stock is in a visible downtrend, and this is where the support as per the diagonal trend line exists. That's around 530 odd levels, and if you notice, this is where the stock took support after initially trying to break out of the resistance level. In the context of supports and resistances, always remember that it is very difficult to break these horizontal lines when compared to these diagonal lines. It is easier for stock prices to breach the diagonal lines, which signify the overall trend, when compared to the horizontal lines, which define your support and resistance levels. So to come to a conclusion, what we have covered here is what do we mean by a support level or a support zone, what do we mean by a resistance zone, and what do we mean by trend lines, which can be either an uptrend or a downtrend, and how to identify these supports and resistance zones and the trend lines. Finally, let's talk about zig lines, which will help you visualize the support and resistance zone better. So on the same chart, I can go to this particular option, which is a FX option, which means indicators and strategies, and I can search for something known as zigzag. So when I apply this particular indicator, if you see here, this is giving you a better visualization of the entire picture. The stock price is moving in a certain fashion, but the zig lines are based on certain parameters which will plot a zig line as an overlay on the stock price movement or the candlestick chart. So if you notice, these zig lines are taking the peak at the same resistance level that we had plotted, and it is taking a bottom at the same support level that we had plotted. So for beginners, it's advisable that you start using zig lines, but eventually, once you are able to practice, you should be able to see these things from the visual nature of the chart and rely less and less on the indicators. I hope you are now able to better sense of what we mean by supports, resistances and trend lines, and be mindful of the fact that these are the foundations of your journey to start and be successful in technical analysis.